My name is Mikaela de la Myco. I am here to present my research findings in a citizen science research project called the Mothers of the Mushroom Project, which is one that we've been working on for the last 2 years, but was dreamed up many, many years ago. And as always, I would like to start this conversation with song. It's so important to me that we have musicality and performativity and texture and the graces of what motherhood can bring into this psychedelic community, which is why I do this work. And so I wanted to share a song that I heard in ceremony once, and it's a lullaby in Aztec or Nahuatl. And it's been really like haunting me since I first heard it. And so I'm going to open up this space by singing this beautiful lullaby. Tu 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 teshkote ah ah teshkote tu 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 teshkote ah ah teshkote. All right, so Mothers of the Mushroom, citizen science for psychedelic families. I had the honor to be assigned my motherhood assignment in 2019, where I found out that I was pregnant. Surprise! And yeah, I had a lot of questions about that because I've had relationship with the mushroom for many years. I dosed for the first time at 19, and there I am at 25, sitting with this question: are mushrooms safe in pregnancy? Can I continue my relationship? And so that was really the question and the landscape in which this project was really birthed. And so with that, I want to leave a huge disclaimer. We were just talking about, legality and lawyers reading your newsletters. So I just want to say that this is educational use only. Although I am in the birthing space and work with birthing people, I'm not a medical professional. I'm a lay care provider. So I just pray that you use this information at your discretion, at your own risk, and if you feel that other people would benefit from it, just move forward sharing this information in a cautious and conscientious way, right? In a harm reduction perspective. And I do really feel that with legal changes coming, it is super important for people to have information, and information is going to come from a lot of different areas, and it's going to come from a lot of different people, licensed and unlicensed, underground and above. And so I just pray that through this work you see, in some ways, the value in the approach that we've been able to take with Mothers of the Mushroom, because I think citizen science matters. So rematriating entheogen. So this is me in Mount Shasta, pregnant with my son. I'm about 6 months pregnant at the time. And this is just after having sat in a mushroom circle with a traditional healer, an abuelita. She's from Jalisco, Mexico. Her name is Abuelita Chihuasochi. And she was the one who answered the question for me. So I asked, I'd been to one of her abundance rituals before, and asked her, Abuela, are mushrooms safe for me in pregnancy? I'm pregnant, I have this relationship with mushroom. What is your perspective? And so not only did she just tell me what she told me, but she allowed me and welcomed me to exist in her ceremonial space very visibly pregnant. So not only did it feel like this is my cultural perspective, but this is also us welcoming you into my cultural perspective and inviting you into that. And so that is a level of permission that most people in the West are not going to experience. And that was a privilege, I have to say. It was a privilege to receive it directly in that way. And it really actually kind of started the project of rematriating entheogens, which is like my thesis statement for my time in the psychedelic space. If I die on a hill, it's rematriating entheogens. And rematriating entheogens means to restore the rights, the roles, the responsibilities, the relationship, the resources, and the respect to maternal caretakers in the psychedelic space. Moms, aunties, daughters, birthing people of all kinds. We deserve to be here. A lot of the reason why we even have what we have, the richness of the songs, the richness of the recipes, that's kitchen magic. That's like your mom holding you and cradling you and growing you in culture. That's how we have anything. That's how we have woven tapestries. That's how we have basketry. It's all domestic arts work. And so it is to remember, it is to take active steps. Rematriating entheogens isn't a concept, it's an action. It's an activity that we take place in when we engage with entheogens. And so this was the seed. My son, Martin, in me, was the seed of this. And he's 5 now. And I wanted to just take a moment to also thank the land. So this is Mount Shasta. Some people think or say that it's like the root chakra. I don't know. It's like very new agey, but it is a sacred site. It's a place of specialness. And so I hope that people also understand that rematriation is also about reconnecting people with land and recognizing that like there's living temples. Like, not every church has 4 walls, right? This is the land of trees. This is where the waters meet, the rivers of the water meet the ocean. Like, these are our sacred spaces. And so just as important as it is to return, like, maternity to the space of psychedelics, so is it to rematriate the land and to return people to land. And that word rematriation, that word rematriate comes from the indigenous land back movement. So let us not forget that land matters. Preservation of land, the cleanliness of land, and the sacredness of land is a part of what we do and have an assignment to do here in psychedelics. So what happens when we don't care about land? What happens when we don't care about mothers and birthing people? So the crisis that we're dealing with is the world is on hard mode right now. For a lot of people, the world is on expert mode. There's pressure coming from all sides, and there's already pressure on moms, even in perfect circumstances. And so every time we're hearing about like a new crisis arising, a new inflation and blah, 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 it's like, imagine that coming down on someone who's already burning both sides of the candle and then has a screaming baby and then has to cook dinner and then has to maybe care for themselves, right? It's a big work, especially if you're not in community. And I'm very grateful to be a part of a community that does care about mothers, but I would really hope that if you're a mom in the psychedelic community that you're being well taken care of. And I will just say that's not always the case, right? And so what is developing in the space of mental health is that postpartum depression is really showing up in a huge way in our population. And yes, 1 in 7 women experience postpartum depression, mothers experience postpartum depression, but that's just what's reported. That's just what we know by documentation. But by a show of hands, who is a mom? Cool, we don't have that many moms over here. That's beautiful. I'm glad I'm educating you all. It's so important that y'all can maybe moms raise your hand. Okay, look at a mom. Aren't they beautiful? Isn't it just a gift? Thank you for being here, for finding ways for your kids to be safe, for prioritizing this work, for prioritizing your space. Some of you have spoken on stages already. It is an honor that moms are here. Often reporting most statistics are deeply underreported. So 1 in 7 moms ain't even touching it. It's probably a lot more. And symptoms of things like postpartum depression are things like anxiety, feeling disconnected from baby, not wanting to get out of bed, right? Those things are really scary when you're caretaking someone who's completely dependent upon you. Not only for the person experiencing the lack of mom, but also for the person and the guilt that they must feel to not be able to show up for motherhood properly, right? It's not just the baby blues. It's not just, oh, I can't fulfill my role. It's like, I cannot physically get out of bed. It is very hard for me to muster what I need to get here to the point of caring. And the system isn't helping very much either, right? I just recently saw a video of a beautiful mom holding 2 sweet babies in her arms, sleeping on her chest, And she said, I have to go back to my full-time job tomorrow. My 6-week leave is done tomorrow. And she's in utter, the babies need her, and she needs the babies. That's what's important to recognize. This is not a one-way street. This is a relationship. Just as much as those babies need her, she and her body and her hormones and everything in her is also telling her she needs to stay attached. And everything in this system is like, nah, we need you back at work. We need you back at your job. And I'm choosing to not have another child because I just so happened to get pregnant at the right time. Martin was born 2019. The world shut down the next year. I felt what it was like to stay home with my kid for the first year of their life and get paid to do it. I just so happened to get unemployment. But I got to stay with him, and I got to nurture that relationship. And I was like, I would choose not to want to bring another baby into this world knowing that I couldn't provide this for them too. And the closeness and the richness of the relationship that I have, even with all that benefit, even with $50,000 coming in, even with a full year at home, that shit was still hard. We need a lot more, and we need nuanced care, and that's what moms are looking for. They are looking for flexible, affordable, autonomous, effective care that meets the diverse needs, right? This isn't just talk therapy. This isn't just chemically augmenting our mind. This is somatics. This is catharsis. This is I want to review, I want to reflect, I want to put my hands in the soil. What can provide that within the Western medical framework right now? Not much. And all of that's going to be out of pocket. So what do? What do moms do? So why would moms choose psilocybin mushrooms? A lot of us already had relationship to psilocybin mushrooms, and I know this is a leap, wow, we need catharsis and somatics, mushrooms for everything. Not necessarily, but there's reasons why a mom might choose to do this, and a reason anyone might choose to lean on the sacred medicine is because it's affordable, actually. Unfortunately, a pound is going for what it's going for right now, which is a huge dishonor to the cultivators and how much time it actually takes to put a pound together. But it is a lot more affordable, per pill or per microdose than you would imagine. You can make microdoses for a year with just $100 if you buy an ounce and make it yourself. That's very affordable medicine. That's very flexible medicine. That's very accessible medicine. And what I love about it is that it's very adaptable. It can come in a variety of shapes. It can come in a variety of modalities of ingestion. You can eat them when you want to. You can eat them when you don't want to. There is protocol, but it is completely an autonomous relationship that we can foster with psilocybin mushrooms because it isn't delineated by a particular governing body at this time, which is a huge gift to us right now, hopefully through decriminalization over legalization. It's customizable, as I said, and it's very effective. There's a speaker speaking today during the conference that did research on psilocybin's use for just depression and general anxiety. Okay, if it's effective for depression and general anxiety, why not for depression and general anxiety as experienced by birthing people and moms in the postpartum? Why would it just not benefit those folks? And we're going to talk a little bit about the gap in research, and it's not just a gap in research in the psychedelic space, it's a gap in research generally in research. There is a gap that excludes women in general research, and there was a clear reason why that happened. There was a clear timeline as to when that took place, and science is deeply needing to recover from that choice. And not only is it effective, but also this entourage effect that happens with psilocybin mushrooms, because a lot of the research that's taking place right now is with synthetic psilocybin. And most people are not going to have access to synthetic psilocybin. They're going to have access to fruiting body mushrooms. And so in this research, we surveyed mothers who had a relationship with fruiting body mushrooms, and I think that's really it's a deviation from what's happening in psychedelic research because they are not working with fruiting bodies because of its variability. But I think it's really important to imagine maybe there's more in these mushrooms than just psilocybin. There's psilocin, there's norbaeocystin, there's baeocystin. There's so many compounds we don't even know about that could be generally modulating the benefit of the effect of psilocybin. So the entourage effect can be so meaningful for people. If you're an herbalist, you would understand we're not just, engaging with a plant for a specific compound. We're engaging with a plant for a spirit, for a life, for a whole ecology within itself. And so denaturing the spirit of psilocybin, I'm glad that we didn't have to do that. And then a call home, and this is like one of my favorite things about working with psilocybin mushrooms, is that psilocybin mushrooms are ubiquitous to every continent, which means that you can find psilocybin mushrooms on every continent, a species or two. And so what does that mean? It is a universal medicine. It means although cultural contexts might change, we belong to them and they belong to us, no matter where you come from, no matter what country you're from, no matter what nationality. The way that my culture honors mushrooms might look different, but your culture has a way that it honors mushrooms just by sheer virtue of it having contact with it. So I love working with psilocybin mushrooms because of its inherent relationship to the human family in every corner of the earth. And so what happens when we include mothers and fruiting body mushrooms in psychedelic research? Well, we absolutely encounter complexity. And that is what researchers are really struggling with, is the complexity of how do we control for these variables? You can't. You can't control for the variables. And that's really scary, and it makes people not want to study women in general. Oh, their hormones change too much. There's also ethical constraints, of course, right? Like, what if psilocybin comes into contact with developing fetal tissue? We don't know what the outcomes of that are going to be like, so we just need to keep it out. We need to wait till mom is given birth and no longer breastfeeding and never will, right? We need to not put any contact to children. Inclusivity, generally marginalized and minority communities, even though we are the global majority, are not included in most researches, and even research that concerns them, which is a little scary. And confirmation bias, if you're someone like me who already really likes mushrooms, then, we might look for things that might work for our conceptions of the world. And so I think even in this project, we do our best to be as neutral as possible, to highlight there were also challenges. And I want to talk about those challenges today because there were, and it's important to understand why those challenges exist. And then, of course, variables. There's things about a mother's life, right, that are constant variables. Did she eat this day? Was she under a certain level of stress? Was she bleeding this day? Was she breastfeeding this day? And variables like the potency of the strain of mushroom that you're working with. As we're going to look into some of the findings of the research, it wasn't as beneficial for moms to be on a protocol, actually. Protocols were like the least commonly used pacing with ingesting mushrooms. They took a very intuitive approach. You can't track that. That's hard to track. It's hard to track method. It's hard to track motivation. And in a lab setting, we need to control for these variables. And so how do we approach this? How do we approach including moms and fruiting bodies in psychedelic research? You have to do citizen science. And right now there is a research study going on postpartum depression using a chemical that acts similarly to psilocybin. And I've been helping people just research doula-ing people into that study. And I'm watching scientists weed people out because they weren't depressed enough. I had two women actually, rejected from the study because their pregnancies resulted in miscarriage. What a missed opportunity. What a missed opportunity. Like, postpartum depression can happen to people that didn't result in a birth that didn't result in a birth. So science is missing a lot of shots right now. So citizen science seems like, especially in a field that's difficult to study, at least gonna push on an edge where science can maybe take a baton. So I really like to pull on the thread of indigenous wisdom whenever I do any kind of work like this, because people like Robin Wall Kimmerer knows these many worlds. She's familiar with both academia, science-based researcher. If anyone knows Robin Wall Kimmerer, she wrote Braiding Sweetgrass. She's an indigenous botanist who's also, knows the land through lived experience and also has studied within formal research the indigenous cultivation practices and how they really stand up to science. And so she has this amazing quote: when we use the scientific method in an experiment, we have to look at one variable at a time. So in order to really understand how something works, science says we must exclude all else. We're not going to talk about relationships. And so this isn't to like poo-poo because we have scientists in the room and like in this building, but it's to say that trying to look at the world as true through this lens is going to miss a lot. That's all. So we have to talk about safety and ethics if we're going to talk about moms eating mushrooms with babies in their bellies. So toxicity, thalidomide, exclusion, and anthropology. So toxicity. There's so many different levels of understanding what toxicity is, and in this slide, we're just talking about death as a toxic endpoint. So how safe is psilocybin mushroom? LD50 is the amount of a material given all at once which causes the death of 50 or 1/2 of a group of test animals. This is how psilocybin stacks up against some commonly utilized substances, even in obstetric practice. We use morphine in obstetrics to stabilize for epidural, caffeine, don't talk to me, I haven't had my coffee yet, type shit, aspirin, LSD, there's a lot of blotter babies out there. THC, we love our cannabis. Moms love their cannabis. We have mescaline and psilocybin, which mescaline is so near and dear and has actually a lot of history within the birthing practices of indigenous folks in the Southwest, and peyote being a primary one. We're not going to talk about that today, but I have a resource for you if you are at all interested in mescaline-producing cacti and its relationship with birthing people. Psilocybin, though, for the numbers, I'm 175 pounds and 280 milligrams per kilogram of pure psilocybin. So this isn't even psilocybin-containing mushrooms. This is pure psilocybin that you would need to kill half of a population. This translates to 22.2 grams of pure psilocybin. It would take 4 pounds to kill me. Or even like, if a bunch of us took it, half of us. Right? So Mama Ayana's in the room, have a lot of experience with high dosing. And it is fair to say that 4 pounds would be hard to achieve, right, as far as consumption. So for just looking at psilocybin, if death is a toxic endpoint, psilocybin is, disclaimer, psilocybin is pretty safe of a substance. I wouldn't even have moved forward with any of the research that I've done or even consider talking about what I talk about if I had any question of its safety. So, thalidomide. The thalidomide crisis is the reason why women are excluded from clinical trial research. You should know about it. So thalidomide was a substance that was used for morning sickness and general nausea, and it would help to encourage sleep in women in the 1960s. And it was served to women of all kinds between mid-1950s to the early 1960s. It caused the deaths of many babies. They were just handing it out, prescribing to anybody, pregnant women, breastfeeding women. It caused birth defects in 10,000 children over the span of 48 different countries. And so, because that went down, because European doctors and American doctors and Australian doctors were just handing out untested medicine to women, they said, pump the brakes. We can't study women in science anymore. I mean, that was part of the problem to begin with. They never considered women as reasonable subjects to even ethically engage with before they decided to dose everybody. So that happened in 1961, and then in 1977, they said, full stop on studying women in science, especially for clinical trials and early science, early clinical research. It wasn't until the 1980s that whole coalitions of people within the FDA started to say, hey, maybe women should be included in this. We are only about 39 years out from that. So we have a long way to go in terms of the systems we use to include women in scientific research. Even menopause research was done with male bodies. So, yeah. So exclusion, straight up exclusion. So we're going to talk about what is here, because there is actually something. When I was pregnant, I was like, all right, Google, boop, 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 psilocybin pregnancy, what's up? C-psilocin, that's all we got. C-psilocin experiment, intermuscular, rats. This is pure psilocin, so talking LD50, psilocybin, pure substances here. So what they did find was there was no increased risk of birth defects or fatalities, and I'm talking, this is a high dose of psilocin in the arm. This is far beyond therapeutic dose. High dose C-psilocin crosses the placental and blood-brain barriers. That's what they found. They found that the mother had it, and it was in the placental tissue, and it was in the brain of the baby. The concentrations were highest in the mother, crossed through at a reduced dose, which is exactly what a placenta is supposed to do. That is what you would expect a placenta to do. And because it eliminated more slowly from fetal tissue, as in the fetal tissue excreted psilocin slower, so mom wasn't high anymore, but baby was, the conclusion was human consumption of psilocybin mushrooms should be avoided during pregnancy. There's a lot of problems with this conclusion. First of all, they weren't testing psilocybin. They weren't even testing mushrooms. And they were testing in a way that didn't even replicate typical use. Who's gonna shoot up pure psilocin? This is not what's happening with typical use. And so this is straight up all we have on pregnancy and not even psilocybin. And the NIH and everywhere else, concerning birth defects, effects on fertility, toxicity, studies have not been done. Don't do it. Don't try it. That is what every Google search will tell you. That's mother and baby. There's nothing else. And they all trace back to C-psilocin. That's all we have. 2014. So I was like, I gotta look somewhere else. If this is it, this is prohibition as harm reduction. We all know in this room that never worked. And so I went to the abuelita. And this is where I landed, and that's how I landed here. So this is what I call honoring the many ways of knowing. So the many ways of knowing, we need indigenous guidance in psychedelic science. We need indigenous guidance in psychedelic science for a lot of reasons, because the academy really likes written language. Indigenous cultures, a lot of them rely on oral tradition. Okay, you already lost so much there. We've lost so much in storytelling. Storytelling is very important. What we know in the anthropological literature is we have mushroom effigies dated back 6,000 BC. Carved stone mushrooms. People were already worshiping these fools before we even had a concept that humans were existing. So I just want to recognize that if we're going to, pedestalize people like Terence McKenna, for example, and say, oh, stone ape hypothesis is such an interesting idea, wow, like they are so responsible for the evolutionary process of early hominids, and look at how mushrooms and mushroom hunting must have made, the hunting class more virile, and their libidos were higher, they were down to cooperate and build empire together. What about the gatherers? What about all the moms eating mushrooms in the village that were epigenetically changing babies? I love Terence McKenna, and anyone who says that evolutionary change happened because men changed doesn't understand anything about the way birth works or evolution works through birth. So, honoring generations of knowledge, what we're crying out for is the recognition of things that we've already known. Regarded lived experience data, we don't see that a lot. We don't see lived experience as data, but it is data. That's how we know anything. My lived experience, my anecdotal, right? They literally downplay anecdotal information. That's lived experience as data, fool. If you have enough people saying the same thing, you should probably listen. Integrating storytelling, maintaining cultural context. Okay, cool. Psilocin in a lab setting. has this effect. Okay, that's not mom at the park where it's actually going to take place. That's not lived experience. I worked with James Fadiman on this project. He said the closer you get to a double-blind, randomized clinical setting, the further you get from real life. And so the insights gained in that space might not be translatable to the real world. We need real-world, applicable information. And not only that, but like the songs, the other plants, the other contexts that these medicines exist inside of also potentiate their benefits. Centering relationships, right? I've proposed research before. Boston Medical. I was talking to this guy. His dad was a researcher at Boston, Mass, who works in maternal fetal care. I wrote this up. I said, hey, could we study this for postpartum? And he said, well, we'd have to use synthetic psilocybin. And I was like, okay, maybe I can deal with that. But the only way to get money would to be if that company would supply the psilocybin, then fund the research, then whatever came out would then verify and validify the product's effectiveness. It's not about moms having relationships with mushrooms. It's about a business making a product. That's what funds science. That's the dogmatic. It's literally worshiping money god. That's what drives science. Science likes to think that it isn't dogmatic in its beliefs. Let me tell you, when the money talks, they make results look the way that they like. So centering relationships, that's what this study has always wanted to do, and I think it did it really well. So the first iteration of any of this conversation that looked in any way legitimate was the entheogenic earth medicine assisted motherhood guide that I wrote with women on psychedelics back in 2021. This is a 52-page ebook. It's circulated since then. It's completely free. Download it. That's a QR code. We try to make it pretty and really fun to read. People print it out. They write notes. But it covers a variety of medicines. Psilocybin is just one chapter. We go through LSD. We go through cannabis. We go through gumbo. We go through ayahuasquita, we go through peyote, hikuri. We tried to cover all of our bases by pulling what was available in the scientific literature and then the anthropological information and data. Free education, free resources for birthing people in the psychedelic space has been pretty much the name of the game from jump. And if anyone wants like a hard copy of this, I'll leave a stack up here, and it has everything you might want downloadable. Okay, from book to book. I got an email from Microdosing Institute. Because I wrote that book a few years ago, some people started to care about what I had to say. I think that just happens when you write a book. And I taught with Microdosing Institute for a couple years, and James Fadiman, the father of modern-day microdosing, an amazing citizen scientist who I saw when I was just a baby in the space in like 2016, talking at a conference about his citizen science research with microdosing, was in an email thread with me. You should talk to him. He wants to do a book on microdosing and have a chapter on pregnancy, breastfeeding, and postpartum. We think you are the right person to talk to him. And so we started talking and recognized that we had a shared interest in lived experiences. And the question of whether psilocybin mushrooms are safe during pregnancy, breastfeeding, and postpartum is as much an anthropological one as a quantitative one. Yes, we could look at the numbers, sure. I'm going to show you all the data. It's interesting. But truly, why do people do this? In what circumstances do they do it? And what are the outcomes? What benefits do people receive? And so we decided to ask people about their experiences. And as far as like a generational like baton pass, he was cold calling folks. So he was working with a midwife from the UK who was like a psychedelic doula. And so she was just sending him clients, and they were just getting on calls and writing down the answers to their questions. And I was like, that seems effective. And I have a social media platform that I've been talking about this stuff on for some time. What if we created a survey? What if we made a survey that people could just fill out in our sleep? and see how many people we can get. So we had flyers, I printed out postcards, I handed them out in the street, not in the street, like that's ridiculous, but I was like at festivals and moving around in spaces where I feel like people might care, and talked about this openly on my platform. In 2 years, we were able to get 411 stories. And in those 2 years, we were able to analyze the data and consolidate and look at and quantify qualitative information, actually with the help of AI, which was really cool. It saved a lot of human computational power, and I was able to work with an amazing data scientist who's also a mother of the mushroom, whose child is severely autistic and has, as a mother, benefited deeply in her ability to hold space for him, to show up in her own motherhood, especially with the intersection of special needs. Like, not only is it hard to be a mother, but to be a mother of a very severely special needs child is even more added pressure. So this book, Microdosing for Health, Healing, and Enhanced Performance, just launched earlier this year. So it's like February of 2025. Our website, mothersofthemushroom.com, launched a couple months ago too. And our view is that community science needs to be accessible to communities. This is our research paper. I'm just scrolling through it on my phone. This is a video. We have resources, FAQs. This is the stories area. The stories are individually categorized by subject matter, and you can read each individual story with some basic stats. And what is so cool is that, yes, there's like a little blip to maybe get you to resonate with this particular story, but then you can really read out some of those questions. Did any of them end in miscarriage? What surprised you about your mushroom journey? What was your protocol in dosing? In what form? And these are very personal shares. They've been all anonymized, of course, with the consent of the people that gave their stories, but stories matter. When I read through some of these, I like hella cry. Like, there's a lot of beauty in these. And we have special topics like breastfeeding, so we have statistics about breastfeeding. And then we have this cool area where you can do keyword searches, so you can keyword specifics that you're interested in and then get some of those answers, which is really awesome. So our vision was to just make this as fun, user-friendly as possible for people to get the information. This is the research paper and audiobook QR code. So moms are busy people. Can't sit down and read a book all the time. And it's boring too. Like, I've read a research paper. It's not designed to be digested by the general public. It's in this like scientific jargon that's like very divisive. It's very like, if you don't understand things in this way, you don't get access to the information. So we wrote the research paper at a high school reading level. Because why the fuck not? It's not that hard to understand most of this information. And not only should it be able to be read by people, but for the busy mom, we figured, let's make it an audiobook too. So I sat in my partner's studio in our garage and recorded it. So now you can listen to it while you're washing dishes or changing diapers or cleaning your kitchen. And I feel like if we're gonna make it for moms by moms, like, let's understand where moms are at in their ability to digest information. So the audiobook's there. I'm just gonna pause here. Does anyone have any questions, concerns before I get into the data? Okay, we'll keep going. So Reggie said I have 10 minutes. So I'm gonna breeze through the data. You can access it here. I'm not gonna bore you all with like the charts, although I did like making the charts. So mothers ingested mushrooms at different life phases, 200 before pregnancy, 178 during, 237 ate mushrooms while breastfeeding, 408 ate mushrooms after giving birth, so some in the postpartum period, some beyond. Some of these are older mothers too with grandbabies. Of the 411 participants, 57 ingested while breastfeeding, 43 ingested while pregnant. There were no reported fatalities. No one has that number. No one has that number. No one in the scientific community right now could say there was a research study done with moms who ate mushrooms and there was no reported fatalities. I don't want to speak like too far forward, because if you grow and graduate those numbers, there might be a chance that could happen. So I try to be humble with these statistics. But I was just very grateful to hear that without controlling for any other variable, just eating mushrooms alone didn't increase risk. That's just what we're seeing. Dosing practices of mothers. We are more than microdosing moms. I've been in a lot of articles about microdosing moms and the new wine mom. Like, wow, it's so popular now. It's just scratching the surface on the depth of relationship that mothers have with mushrooms. 87 6 grams or more. I mean, that's important. Mid-dosing, 3 to 6 grams. Ceremonial dosing for mothers while pregnant. I served mushrooms while pregnant. Eating ceremonial size doses. When I was 7 months pregnant, I had 3.5 grams of mushroom and really was able to process a lot of the fears that I had going into the birth space. And that was very meaningful for me. That actually made a meaningful step in my ability to give birth because this thing that I was afraid of wasn't looming behind me. And I could actually welcome the medicine of death in that journey, process, cathartically move through it. That's what we were talking about earlier. It's like the catharsis, the musicality of it, the physicality of it, not just thinking about it, but feeling it. And feeling where my fear was coming from allowed me to have a beautiful birth at home, no complications, healthy baby, good bonding, latch, the whole thing. Like, I'm not saying mushrooms did all that, but it certainly helped me get closer to it. Frequency of ingestion. So I was saying intuitive microdosing, 72% of the 411. So protocol-based approaches was 24%. So about a quarter of people will follow a rigid protocol. What this means is that mothers really appreciate the flexibility. You don't know what mood your kid's gonna be in on dose day. Sometimes that means it's not your dose day, and no microdosing coach should push you past that. You should be able to arrive at your kids and arrive at mushroom in a way. And we're gonna go over the challenges. So primary motivations, not I wanted to get high. Avoiding pharmaceuticals, addiction recovery, spiritual connection, mental health support, self-exploration and growth to reach my parenting goals, physical well-being, genuine recreational curiosity, which is healthy and vibrant and the mark of being a human and a live person. Right? Maybe that's the one I want to get high. But it's just nice to know that people came in with hopes and dreams. And like, I've heard psilocybin has been the promise of something, and I want to see if it can work for me. Reported benefits, mental health, parenting, postpartum, and breastfeeding. So here are some quotes. Decreased back pain and decreased nerve pain. So it was really interesting to see psilocybin's implications for physical well-being. James Fadiman talks a lot about that, the physical support that mushrooms can provide, and they're trying to understand why. Less repulsed with breastfeeding. Oh, we have to keep psilocybin away from breastfeeding. What if psilocybin helps to facilitate breastfeeding, though? Mama had become more loving. Mama laughed more. Mama had better days. Dead. like I cry reading these. I don't read them all the time, but like when I go through the information, it's so moving how it benefits kids. It made a huge difference for my child because I was a more patient, present parent, and he was so much happier because I was happier. Period. Come on, like if we're failing moms, then we're failing kids too. Addressing the challenges, because it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. Mothering while processing. Sometimes I'll have flashbacks of my trauma. Okay, now I have to go make lunch. Try that. Having to process that while still fulfilling my responsibilities as a parent. Challenging. This is a challenge. It makes you wonder, okay, so maybe you don't dose around your kids, but maybe the kids are actually bringing up things that I need to process. Where is the middle ground? Where is the safety in this? Emotional intensity, even some physiological, even microdoses increased my nausea. Okay, we have some physiological, a lot of people said it made me more sleepy. That can definitely happen with microdosing too. Social stigma was the top rated challenge about eating mushrooms as a mom. Anxiety around getting my baby taken away if anyone found out. There are moms right now that I know that are in legal custody battles with their ex-baby daddies because their baby daddies know that they eat mushrooms or even care about other people in their communities enough to make microdoses for other people and uses that against them to keep them from their kids. Accessing mental health support should never be grounds for removal of children. But the stigma, the general ideology around moms taking drugs is massive, and it's very much encoded with the drug war. We're still fighting up against the Reagan era when it comes to moms who eat mushrooms. I wish I had the support and correct guidance to microdose during pregnancy. So this was a tough one. Microdosing while pregnant, like, are there safety protocols? Can we possibly approach that in a helpful way? So what I love about citizen science is that you can make adjustments. So then we put in, okay, let's look at some birth outcomes then. Let me add a couple questions to the survey real quick. I wish I would have done it sooner. We began recording the birth outcomes of mothers who ingested and then started to compare those with national averages to see if they deviate from the general population. Of the 178 mothers who reported, we were only able to collect 14 outcomes. But in those 14 outcomes, all reported newborns were healthy at birth, no significant deviations from population norms. We looked at weight, gestational age, length, and overall condition at birth, if there were any complications. That's a huge statement. We need to do more work on this. So, why citizen science? Why could this be one of the only approaches we have to tackling this problem? It's cost effective. We were able to do this with not that much money. The website, the marketing, the everything. We grassroots very casually funded this. 10 grand? I know that research study I was talking about earlier, $150 million. $150 million to exclude someone who had a miscarriage? That's what science is trying to do right now with that kind of money. Cost effective, it's adaptable. Oh shit, we didn't consider we should be asking about birth outcomes. Cool, plug it in right now. Let's see what we can do. You know, not perfect, but adaptable, very human experience. And with more guidance, I wish I had more help developing that survey so that I could have gotten quantitative analysis more effectively. I'm a human, I'm a mom. Like Reggie said, I do too many things. So with even a little bit of support, citizen science can go so far. That's literally what Oakland High Faith builds on. It's inclusive. No, we did not weed out for non-binary people. We included the fuck out of non-binary people. We wanted to use inclusive language. It was important to. It was important to visibilize the nuanced experiences. It was important to include grandmothers in the survey. They're a mom on mushrooms too. It records information closer to typical use, like I mentioned. That's what James Fadiman said. If we understand what's happening in real-world contexts, then our insights can be effective and applicable to the real world. Abstinence is not harm reduction. Education is harm reduction. Wow, you guys are so immoral. How could you promote, endorse, condone moms eating mushrooms while pregnant? They're already fucking doing it. It's already happening. It's been happening for like 6,000 years. We're just asking them why and what happened. No one's pushing them. No one's telling them they have to get well. They have a million options. Not really. They have like 4 options, but this is self-reported. This is autonomous. This is voluntary, and it's meaningful because now we are able to pool some education to further reduce harm in a field that just said, "Don't do it," which was not helping anyone. So our future hopes for this project, we're 2 years in, is to influence health and legal policy. If we visibilize ourselves, maybe more policy will reflect protections for moms who ingest psychedelics, could not be used to remove you from employment or from your family. Simple as that. If all this psychedelic therapy is now becoming available, let's at least protect moms being able to use it. Denver did it. Why can't everyone do it? Educate providers. This has huge implications for businesses too. There's a lot of businesses that I consult with, Microdosing Institute, people that make mushroom microdoses. They're like, a lot of moms reach out to us, but we don't have any information for them. Cool, let's train your team. Let's talk about best practices. Let's see how you can work with your parent population better. Shift public perception. Yeah, not even just on the legislative level, but just on the human level. On the human level, to not even look at microdosing moms like the new wine mom. We don't need to draw that comparison. It's a very different thing happening. And to serve families, period. I consult with a lot of moms. It's actually kind of why this idea of creating a survey happened, is because I was just getting on phone call after phone call after phone call. It's why I wrote the ebook. I was like, man, I'm kind of tired of taking money to individually tell everyone this thing I keep repeating, just write the book so that everyone can have it for free. Publish findings. This is where we're going. Publish findings in a peer-reviewed academic journal. We want that. We need that, actually. People aren't going to believe us unless it's there. So we're working on that. You need money for it. Recreate, refine, and redistribute the survey form for compliance and quantitative data collection. I would love for this survey to be foolproof. It's a Google form. It needs much more than that. Provide education and guidelines in both English and Spanish. So the Mothers of Mushroom research paper is getting translated into Spanish because there is a midwife that I know who works with an indigenous community in Colombia who uses mushrooms for postpartum depression in clinic already. They do it under a indigenous use protection law with the government. So Spanish speakers are already way ahead of us on this. We need it for care professionals. I want brochures in midwifery offices. A lot of people that go in for home births are probably pretty crunchy. We want to progress psilocybin breast milk research, share the latest findings on our website. There are people that are connected to this conference that are sending samples of breast milk to labs to test for psilocybin content at a variety of doses. We want to know how long does it last in breast milk. Destigmatize, further inspire, study. I would love to see a larger research project look at this. There was a sister I spoke to who was interviewed by Kaiser a couple months ago. They are interviewing mothers who ate mushrooms, looking at their motivations. I was like, girl, I got them right here. Let's talk. Give me that email. And then, of course, to stay connected to the families for longitudinal child development studies, because you can't assess toxicity long-term unless you follow the lives of people over the course of their lifetime. And so these are low-key, a lot of them are my friends. My son's 5. Some of these kids are 10 now. It would be good to see, how did they perform in school? Did their ACE scores change from the previous generation? You can't know the long term unless you stay connected to these families, and it would be an honor to be able to compensate these moms for their time, for letting me in on this really valuable information, because they deserve it. I want to just say thank you to all the people that have made this possible, including Mama Ayana E. You're up there. Well, you're up there because the first time I really talked about this was on a panel with you. My son is on my arm, and I'm talking about the importance of mothers being visibilized in the psychedelic space and how important it is for us. And it's not just money that's moving this project. Getting to the root is where Abuelita Chicuasochi came from, an organization that preserves indigenous lifeways. Oakland Hi-Fi, of course, for putting me on. Dr. Bronner's, who's now an official sponsor of this project, which was huge. James Fadiman, Jordan Gruber, the Microdosing Institute, Moms on Mushrooms, that lady who's on Dr. Phil. We're like homies. She knows about this. Wendy Perkins-Shoef is our data analyst. Naomi Tolson's the UK midwife. People of Color Psychedelic Coalition. This lady, Ashley Glowiak, she's in Colorado. She randomly just sends me like funds. Here's 200. Use it. Try to do something with it. It's like meaningful to just know that people care about this project, and all of the moms and all of our friends that make this work really possible. Because at a point, it becomes really evident that if we want to go fast and like blast through the psychedelic renaissance, we're going to go alone. We're going to just think about ourselves. We're going to think about bottom line. We're going to think about my business. But if we want to go far, we got to go together. and that's paced, that's slow. And this project has been really slow. It's been very organic. It's been like the right conversation in the right room with the right person coming in and saying, actually, I know how to fill that gap. It's been beautiful. It's been beautiful to see what we can do when it's not driven by financial interests and financial interests alone. I was crying in my bed last night, asking the question, like, who is this for? Like, who am I even standing up for? Who am I, like, why do I have a microphone in my hand? Who is this for? Well, my grandmother was removed from her family just a few days old in the hospital and was sold to a Spanish family. She's indigenous. She was born on the US-Mexico border in El Paso, Texas. And this is really common practice. Indian child removal from families was very common practice in the 60s. And a huge reason why children were removed from Native families was because the life ways that these people expressed didn't look suitable for raising children. And one of those things in those life ways was the ingestion of entheogenic medicine. Peyote, sitting with mushrooms, these were grounds for removing children back then, and they're still grounds for removing children now. Like, this is my grandma. Like, this is her removal from her own family. This is us trying to come home. When I ate mushrooms for the first time, people told me, oh, you're gonna have a bad trip, be careful. And when I ate the mushroom, I realized that my whole life before then had been the bad trip, period. I found home in this medicine because my ancestors ate this medicine. So how instrumental it has been for me as a mother to come home to this medicine, to find my way in this practice, not just as a subject of psychedelic research, but like a maker in it, a creator in it, someone who's like, more than just a consumer of medicine. We're much more than that. We're scientists, we're researchers, we're cultivators. The joy that my mom friends receive from cultivating, building relationship with mushroom is just as important as the joy they feel eating them. We're much more diverse than just a customer base. And so when all the people in the community, with their skills and like leverage their talents, come together to center moms, we all benefit. We can all have really good conversations. We can watch children thrive and grow. And I really pray that we just wrap around moms here in the psychedelic community, that we can wrap around earth, mushrooms, and recognize that the way that we treat moms, the way that we treat children, that tenderness and care, is absolutely applicable to how we treat all living beings on earth. May we never forget where we come from. We come from dirt, we come from soil, we come from nature. This is the sustenance of all the things that we eat, we drink, we wear. Mother Earth is really important. And so if this is for anyone, it's for moms in this room, it's for my grandma, and it's also for like the process of like rematriating entheogens, the process of like restoring our relationship to land, to mushrooms, to medicine, and to the sacred earth. Thank you.